Good afternoon and welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolene Whitney. As Vermonters know all too well, the persistent rainstorms that occurred last summer set records and caused catastrophic flooding throughout Vermont and the Northeast. The flooding prompted emergency evacuations, closed downtown Montpelier, and devastated farms and communities all over the state. The results claimed thousands of homes, businesses, and the full scope of the losses remains undetermined. A report has recently been published that identifies priorities for moving forward, coordinates strategies to support Vermont farmers recovering from lost revenue, and explains the critical need of Vermont's food systems to policymakers. To talk about the reports are co-chairs of the Agricultural Task Force, Roy Beckford, the Associate Dean of the UVM College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and the Director of UVM Extension, and Nicole Dubuque. She serves as the Chief Operating Officer of the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Before we get into some of the nitty-gritty details, can you both just tell me what you learned from participating on this task force?
So I learned quickly that it's really good to have a great co-chair alongside yourself. I really enjoyed working with Nicole, and there are a number of participants from various agencies across the state, and it created a synergy that I really enjoyed.
All right, and yourself?
Yeah, I learned a lot about the needs in agriculture. I've been with the Agency of Agriculture for about a year now, and so to see all the different organizations around Vermont that were really willing to jump up and chip in was really great and astonishing.
Absolutely, and this report starts a little bit before the flooding, back with a deep freeze in May. Can you tell me a little why the report started that early?
Sure, so think about this. In May, there was a freeze which devastated certain crops. Bear in mind that not all our crops are short term. Some of our crops are tree crops, berries and so on, vine crops. And they were just about blooming right around that time when the freeze happened. And what happened is that the governor of the state of Vermont actually requested pretty much a disaster declaration, which was granted by the Secretary of Agriculture. So on top of a declaration, you had a follow-up flooding incident, which just basically accumulated and created a huge problem. And so two things are meshed together and was necessary as a part of the work that we did in moving forward.
So very different disasters, but a similar outcome
Absolutely.
For the people impacted.
Right.
All right, and you performed a survey to kind of determine what the damage was like. What was the response and what really stood out to you?
Yeah, so we had about 264 respondents to the survey, and two things that stood out to me were, one, you'll see in the report that 70% reported that they do not have crop or livestock insurance, which is huge. And secondly, 56% reported in the next year they see that their cash flow will go negative. So that's also a big thing that stood out to me.
Okay, and you mentioned that insurance. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and the impact of not having it?
Sure. So really, there's an impact of not having insurance in that obviously you're not going to get paid out for crops lost or livestock lost. But I think something to really highlight is the fact that it can be cost prohibitive, right? So a lot of people can't afford insurance because the premiums are too high, or in the situations where there are insurance that is more affordable, the payout is really low, and it's not really designed for small diversified farms like we have in Vermont.
So is this something that Vermont farmers should consider doing more of, investing in insurance like that in the future?
I think yes and no. I think the bigger thing is that we need to look at the insurance plans that are out there and see if there's a way to kind of better align them with the needs of New England.
Okay, and a large part of this report was about recovery assistance. What should viewers know?
I would really like them to know that there are resources out there, and that we as the agency, UVM Extension, and a lot of other organizations around the state are working to secure more resources and are still there to help.
Okay, we talked a little bit about cash flow, and so let's discuss the funding. There is a huge gap between the damage and then going into the amount of money that's been brought in for recovery. Can you talk about that difference a little?
Sure. I'm going to let Nicole add to this, but that was significant. When you look at the report and you see how much damage there was, and see how much we were able to at least formally, officially help. There's a significant gap between those two, and the insurance issues that crop insurance issues that Nicole mentioned earlier are part of that gap. So But there's a number of private sector organizations and others who chipped in to try to help farmers as much as possible. But there is a massive gap in damage versus what we're able to provide. And it is one of those things that is very difficult to kind of close that gap in real time.
And do you know off the top of your head that it's about $9 million, I believe, was raised? Does that include the private sector contribution?
So there was about $6 million that went out in different granting programs. As you can see on the chart, that we had BGAP and we had Farmer Disaster Relief and Farmer Emergency Funds, which equates to about $6 million of the $69 million. So no, that does not include all the grassroots efforts in different local communities.
And have you seen? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that in some instances there's crowdfunding fund money that went to some farmers that weren't reported to us necessarily.
All right. And have you seen like a lot of grassroots movements? A lot of people kind of coming in and pitching in to bring in money. Is that something the state's seen a lot of?
Oh yes. In our report specifically. We only included the efforts that were statewide, but there are a lot of local efforts that have gone on for sure.
That's great. Vermont really came together after all that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we're headed into another growing season now. I mean, it's February, but before too long, people will be growing. Can you tell me about what next year looks like for people who are impacted?
So obviously, the impacts of 1 year are going to basically shift to the fortunes of farmers or producers in the follow-up year. So think, for example, about vine crops. How badly our grapes are affected is going to impact how much wine a farmer can sell or produce this year. So those are the kinds of problems. Livestock issues from last year. Money lost last year contribute to income the following year, and how much a farmer can actually invest in a startup kind of enterprise this year. Those are the main problems that happen. It affects bottom line, and all those issues have a negative impact on the follow-up year. So we do expect that this year we're going to see less investments in inputs and so on as a consequence of losses in income last year.
And I understand maybe a field gets damaged and that will impact like a crop, like you've mentioned, vine crops or even the frost impacting apple trees. How does that impact livestock as well?
Oh, certainly. You're talking about how much feed, forage you can actually harvest and store. And then in what ends up happening is that farmers are going to have to purchase those, and that impacts their bottom line again. And certainly you have an impact on how much they can produce, how much milk comes from, how much food the livestock gets. All of those issues really pile up and contribute to the demise of profits in the follow-up year.
And UVM Extension has done a lot of work researching the impact on soil quality as well. Can you speak briefly on that? We
did a number of soil testing right after the flood, and we were out there in the communities throughout the year working with farmers and producers at all times. What we're finding out is that there wasn't such a major problem in heavy metal loads, but certainly the damage from water logging and so on impact things like apple trees and so on. So we're finding a number of issues as a consequence of doing our soil testing and doing the assessments that we normally do.
And this program was just as much about assessing the damage as preventing further damage if something like this happens again. Can you tell me, is UVM Extension much more prepared for another disaster like this?
We've had a number of meetings are coming together among Extension personnel to look at how to prepare ourselves for another similar type of event. We have more people in Extension who are now part of the Extension Disaster Education Network, which is a national network looking at issues just like this. We are actually on the ground through our educational programs and so on, working with producers to make sure that people understand how to mitigate and to just create the kind of resilience that we hope to kind of enmesh and frame in producers' minds as we move ahead.
I want to come back very quickly to some of the insurance discussions we were having earlier, and there's a graphic for the viewers at home as well. Can you talk a little bit about the impacts of insurance? It's not that farmers were underprepared, it was just that insurance can be kind of complicated. Do you mind speaking on that?
Sure, yeah, it can be very complicated, and it can be very expensive to cover the full amount of crops or livestock that you have. Also, the premiums are very high versus what the payout will be. And I think another thing to highlight as well is that a lot of our farmers are getting the majority of their revenue from value-added products. And the insurance itself is going to cover crop loss, or more likely part of the crop loss, but it's not going to cover the value-added products. Roy spoke about vine crops and whatnot. And so I think that's a good example of, like, it would cover the grapes, but it's not going to cover the wine that was lost or that you couldn't make. So I think that's something to highlight, that it's not necessarily that farmers are underprepared, it's that the insurance options out there aren't going to provide them with the payout they need to make themselves whole in a loss.
How has Extension been working with, you said, national partners, maybe places that have effects like this more frequently? Have you been working closely with national partners like that?
Oh, well, through the Extension Disaster Education Network, we certainly have a network of people in all the states in the United States and in our territories, looking at impacts from agriculture disasters and other issues related to that. So we benefit from being part of that national network.
Absolutely. And Nicole, this report outlines recommendations and things to go forward. How is the Agency of Agriculture going to help support farmers doing that?
Yeah, so we're very well positioned to be able to provide education, support, and technical assistance. We do that already. We will continue to do that. And we continue to work with our federal partners. We continue to work with USDA and advocate with folks in Washington to improve federal disaster relief programs for farmers.
To read the full Vermont Agricultural Recovery Task Force Extreme Weather Impact and Recovery Report, go to the website on your screen. That wraps up our program for today. From all the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX, I'm Jolie Whitney. Thank you for watching and have a good one.